Hello and welcome back to another episode of You Want to Do What? Today we've got Andrew Holland on, and he's the head of organic at Embryo, an SEO agency. Hi, Andrew.
Hey there, Daniel. How you doing?
Good, you?
Yeah, I'm not too bad. It's 5 p.m., so I'm getting a little jaded by the end of the day, but hopefully I'm going to answer all the questions and give your listeners some information they might find useful.
Yeah, no, I'm sure you will. On that point, do you want to jump straight in and tell everyone a bit about what you do?
Yeah, so I'm head of organic, which is a rather fancy title, but basically means head of all the marketing that people don't pay for clicks for. So um, essentially we've got a team where we look at SEO and content writing, so all the things that ranks online in Google for that you don't pay for a click, that's like under the organic umbrella. So and my job is to run the team that generate results for our clients. So it's a big team. We're a 7-figure agency, and I think about 10, 11 staff now. We've got vacancies out for more jobs, which is great.
Wow. So tell me a bit about SEO, because I've only just sort of got into this whole world and understanding of SEO, and it is a real sort of a minefield, isn't it? There's so many things to learn about it. And we actually had our first SEO guest on a few weeks ago, and it kind of really piqued my interest because it's a really interesting part of marketing that I think people don't really delve into unless they work in it.
Yeah, I mean, and even the people in the industry have very varying views on the subject. So it is complicated. It's complicated because it's sold in various forms. It's complicated because some people have a version of SEO that's different than others, and there's various degrees, like technical SEO and e-commerce SEO, and there's lots of different tactics you can use. So SEO as an industry, traditionally, we've been really poor at positioning and selling our services. So, and I have a unique view and angle about SEO, but SEO really is about helping people to make better decisions through optimizing a website. And optimizing includes technical fixes to that, and includes also creating content. And because you want people to make better decisions, to choose the client, the site you're working for. And also, if you're a site yourself, you might be a blog, you want to give your information to more people, and SEO can help with that process. So I don't think there's a really one size fit all definition, but I would think a best one would be SEO is about helping people to make decisions and improve their life through content exposure, so to speak.
Very interesting. I think what really piqued my interest actually when I was speaking to our other SEO guest was just how quickly and how much what you do changes, because you're, reliant on, the Google algorithm, and what they're looking for changes so regularly. It's so important to keep up to date with what's happening online, right?
And you know what? I don't know who your guess was. I'll probably disagree with that a little bit, because the end result, there's two ways to look at SEO. There's a pardon me, there's a shallow way in which you're trying to keep up with the Google algorithm and you're trying to get the changes. And the other way is actually to give people what they really need, which is to be generous, be empathetic in terms of the content, and just help people. And you can't game Google. There's no way you can't outgame it. So you have to really be generous. And the sites, traditionally, if you go back through history, the sites that have been the most generous are the ones that are still around and winning. If you take Wikipedia, for example, one of the biggest sites in the world, what does Wikipedia do? It just gives you everything for free and all the information you can ever need. And sites that do that win. Amazon's a vast site, TripAdvisor gives you every review going on every hotel. And yeah, there's making the commercial revenue from that as a process in itself. But I think as SEO tactics go, there's lots of small tactics that can get people shorter wins on less money and things like that. But I've always approached SEO since I've been doing it, really, in terms of it's this process of giving as much information as being the source of information within the industry, whatever niche or industry that is, and providing helpful content. And I think if you provide helpful, high quality content, you usually algorithm proof to a degree. The problem, I think, is where we change opinions and almost people try and game the system. We have problems. I'm not saying that's what your last guest or previous guests do or talk about, but I think yes, you've got to keep your knowledge up to date, but in actual fact, the actual real process of SEO really hasn't changed that much. It's just that people have got away with doing less, if that makes sense. And what they're finding is every time the algorithm changes, they have to go and do a little bit more and a lot more. And if you've always had that approach as to do as much as humanly possible, budget and clients allowing, then you probably ended up being more algorithm proof. I own a personal website. It's been around for, I'm going to say 12 years, and I've barely been hit by algorithms. I've had a couple of times, but then when I looked at that, it was my fault for not providing good in-class content on some of the pages. So, when you've been involved in SEO for that long, or you had a website that's that old, you see the ups and downs. You realize, arguably, it's the failings of the website, not the algorithm.
That is a really interesting perspective, and I've not heard that on SEO. It's actually a nicer way of explaining how SEO works, and it's all about kind of developing that content to actually help people, which sounds great. But
Yep, that's it. That is exactly it. And unfortunately, we wait sometimes. I mean, budgets are one of the biggest problems. If there's finite resources, and that's what budget dictates. There's only so much money some people put in, but we're an underserved, underfunded agent industry, really. As an agency, we're lucky we've got a wide variety of clients, all the way from small businesses to very, very large 7-figure plus ones. And but budgets, generally speaking, across SEO industries are undervalued in comparison with other marketing methods.
no, very interesting. But for you, Andrew, where does this all start? So, did you go to university? What did you do? How did you get into this?
Okay, so I have a really unconventional career path that I wouldn't recommend to people, but I suppose it would be interesting if I gave that the more succinct version of it. So I joined the Staffordshire Police age 16.
Oh, wow.
Under what they called the cadet program then, and it was like a full-time program for 2.5 years, where the first year you'd spend at headquarters and you'd learn everything from first aid to lifeguarding, and also you'd end up going on attachments to both police station and also weirdly in like supermarkets and working with the disabled, to give you this really cross varied function of life to prepare you for going into the police at 18. And then the second year you work at police stations for the whole year. And then so I joined at 18 following that cadetship as to the Staffordshire Police as a constable, and I went through that career path, became a qualified sergeant, worked in covert policing. And what tended to happen is I worked in intelligence, which was covert policing, and it was cool. My role was a CHIS handler, which is a horrible phrase, but it stands for Covert Human Intelligence Source Handler. And basically my job was to recruit informants and to create intelligence from informant information. And
Wow.
and crazily, that actually, believe it or not, you end up putting the intelligence, or you did do it. I don't know what it's like now. I've been gone a long time. But we put it on an internal search engine, so we're like a very mini version of Google. And we had to build links, and I had to write sanitize intelligence logs, like blog posts they were, and also then I have to go and promote the content, to different agencies, because if the informants didn't get paid, if we didn't get results and didn't get drugs recovered or stolen property recovered and things like that. So I didn't know that at the time, but that was like SEO, and it was like SEO school, really, without knowing it. Nobody knew it was SEO. We didn't know that we were involved in search engine optimization, because we didn't really see this as a search engine. It was a network computer and an internal one. So I left that department on the promotion path, and for some reason, I sort of changed tacks in the police force, and I started teaching martial arts, and I set up a website for the club we have, and the club was really struggling. It was hard, and I didn't know anything about marketing in the slightest. I joined Facebook only for the reason of that school. I mean, it was early Facebook days. This is like, to give you some indication, this is like around when the first iPhone came out.
Oh, wow.
At times, yeah. So it is some time ago, and what ended up happening was the club really didn't do well enough, and I said I'd never open up another martial arts club until I learned everything I could about martial arts. And then one day, I set up a website, built it myself, and learned that kind of thing. It was just a basic GoDaddy or WordPress one at the time, and what happened was I left away and then started carrying on blogging about martial arts and self-defense, and then I ended up getting a call for an interview, and I went along, got this call, said, "Can you come on this interview in a couple of hours' time? We want to talk about self-defense." And me being me, egocentric, I asked, how many listeners there were going to be, because that's what you want to tell everyone, don't you? And he said, "Oh yeah, about 8.2 million." I was like, "What? I thought you were
Wow.
local radio." He said, "Oh no, with the Jeremy Vine show on BBC Radio 2." And now I don't listen to radio, and I didn't listen to radio. I don't listen to radio still. I mean, if anything, I listen to podcasts. I think that's the way the world is going a little bit. But obviously back then, this was a big thing. So I went on the radio, did the interview, come back, the producer spoke to me, and I asked him how he found me, and he said, "Oh, we found you online." I was like, what, you found me on the internet? And I thought, well, hold on, if I can get exposure to 8.3 million people on live BBC radio for free, well, for what was a £7 a month website hosting charge, I thought there's got to be something in that. So I started like reverse engineering it, learned about this thing called SEO. I sort of fell into it. And then for the next year, for years and years, what I do is I set up my own websites, run experiments. I kind of became really passionate about it, test out things failed, things were successes, things didn't go so well with some things. I'd come home from like a late shift at like midnight, pour myself a glass of wine, I'd go on that, sit at the kitchen, sit at the dining room table and go through a webinar or read articles and do some writing myself, and then I'd go to bed. And I always made sure I did an hour a day. But and an hour a day doesn't sound much, but it compounds over a long enough period of time. So, and that's what happened. So you're talking probably the best part of, I'm going to guess, best part of 8 years or something like that. Something crazy where I was doing this as a hobby, really, and this as well as other marketing. I was doing YouTube and Facebook stuff for people, and try stuff out and do some stuff for free for people. And I was just really interested. And I mean, obviously, when you're in the police, I've been in the police for a long time by this point, and it was roughly when I got about 16 years in the police, 16 years in, I got diagnosed with chronic asthma. And I was kind of fed up with my career in the police anyway. Paying conditions pay was okay, but conditions were awful. I mean, it was horrific. There was no police officers. We were in the big budget cut period of time. And that was 7 years ago. 8 years ago, I got diagnosed with chronic asthma. And then I took medical retirement after that because I could. And they offered it to me. They said you could never go out on the streets again, and I particularly didn't want to be a police officer that stayed indoors all the time. So I said, yeah, okay, well, I'll go and try this marketing lock out. And then I walked out of the police station, and I think it was 2015, I think it is now, and I walked out on the Friday and on the Tuesday, because remember it, because on the Monday, I'm sure it was April 1st, and I didn't want to start a business on April Fool's Day. And I'd rang around some people and who I'd interviewed and got in touch with and done a bit of some bobs during my sort of free period of time. And then they took me on board as their clients. So they were my first clients, and some of them stayed with me for 5-6 years after that. So I started really as a freelancer, sort of not really knowing what I was doing. And then I'd take any profits I got and reinvested them into training courses. And I spent a fortune on training. I estimate about £30,000 I spent on training courses, and all online. And then from there, it just one thing led to another, I ended up being the trainer for the Chambers of Commerce as a side part, because I'd done a viral video in Stoke-on-Trent. It was like the most, where I'm from, it was the most viral video in Stoke's history about Stoke-on-Trent. And I spent about £50, and that went viral on Facebook within Stoke. I mean, it only had 250,000 people, but 250,000 views. I was happy. And then landed some more clients, and then did millions of views on viral videos, and then started doing more SEO work. And then eventually I morphed very much into the SEO path. So I had a good background in generalist marketing and across the digital spectrum. And then eventually SEO tends to settle, because that's where the longer retainers and the higher paying clients were. And I just kept going and going through the business. So it took a kicking in COVID, but I think everyone's did. And then post all the lockdowns, I was in a position where we we were like a boutique agency. So it was me, I had a member of staff, plus a lot of freelancers who were supporting me, and I couldn't recruit. So I had a real bottleneck of recruitment problem where I was looking to recruit and it would have killed me and I would have had to take on a lot of debt. And it isn't long after pandemic, and I'd been doing this for 7 years at this point, and an opportunity came up at Embryo, where I am now, which is one of Manchester's leading agencies and one of the country's fastest growing digital agencies, and with 50 staff. And I know I was offered the role of head of organic, and I looked at I'm one for seeing what life is out there and what it holds, and I'd come from such a weird background and running my own business for 7 years and the police before that, and I thought, well, you know what, I've got nothing to lose and everything to gain, and I joined about 5 months ago now, and yeah, it's been going strong ever since, and it's a fantastic experience. And my business is sort of not folded, but it's morphed into what you would call a training business. So we do online training. I've got a book out and courses and things like that. So that's still going, but it's changed in identity. And my day-to-day job is here at Embryo. We're running the organic team.
Such an interesting sort of career path you've had there. And I love the fact that you sort of taught yourself SEO over 8 years, an hour a day, which is just like, we always get this kind of advice, just keep chipping away at what you want to do, and you can do it in your spare time like you did, or after work, and it does compound. That's exactly what our listeners love to hear. Once you build up and you compound, you can achieve a career switch or something like that.
Yeah, I mean, I hate to emulate what Gary Vee says if you're a follower of Gary Vaynerchuk online, but patience is extremely underrated, and the reality is I'm proof of that, patience. And I think we live in a world where there's an incredible amount of pressure to achieve results in a very short period of time, and it's we're as younger people, I don't know what the demographic of your audience is, but it doesn't matter if you're older or younger, you can start again at any point in time. And we don't really have that kind of mantra shared within, or the narrative of that shared within society. You go to school, you've got to study, now you expect to go to college and university, and if you don't go to university, you're a failure of some kind, or or if you go and take a job at 16 and then change careers at 20, you sometimes job hop, or you've got got no navigation in your career. And there's lots of labels around people that move around and try different things, but ultimately neurological diversity or neurodiversity can only come from a range of things, such as your background and your experiences. And I'm a big fan of you need to get as many experiences in life as possible, because you don't know how that's going to implode within your brain. And once you have this differences and varying sets of information that's colliding your brain, ideas happen. That's where ideation comes from. You literally, the sparks of career change go ahead inside your brain, and and you can be on all kinds of paths. 1 minute you can be working as in a recruitment office, and the next minute you can become a professional surfer. Life is no longer a case of you get a job, spend your whole life in that job, in that office, and with the same company, and then retire with a nice watch and a retirement party 30 years later. It isn't like that anymore. We're all in this game for a long time, and work is such a big part of that. And I think we should be masters of our own destiny, and also try a lot and fail a lot. And there's nothing wrong with that.
I couldn't have said that better myself. That's exactly the sentiment of this podcast and why we do what we do. And I love that approach and that attitude towards trying different things. And we encourage everyone to, I did a post on LinkedIn yesterday saying, opposing to going to university, I would spend those 4 years at different careers or different jobs or trying different things out. And the ROI on that will be 100 times what you get from going to university. And I got a bit of slack for a few people, downplaying university. But in my opinion, you can learn what you learn at university for a huge amount of courses online for free, or you can pay for a course. You don't need to go to university for 4 years. And I'll be honest, loads of my, friends that went to university, that they'll be the first to say they essentially partied for 3 years and kind of got a degree at the end. So I'm not downplaying uni. It has its place, but I 100% agree with you in your sentiment on trying different things, and just, you've got nothing to lose. And like you say, you're going to be working for a hell of a long time, so you will most likely change. It's not like our parents and grandparents before us, where, like you said, you get a nice watch and a retirement party after 30 years.
Well, and this is true. I mean, it's interesting is we go back and ask that question. Seth Godin's got a fantastic TED talk about what is school for. If you've ever seen it, it's on YouTube. And what is education for, and the purpose of school, and the purpose of certificates, and going to a certain type of university and a certain type of school. And largely it can be status games. If you go to a certain type of school, it's about, they have certain standards and the reputation. You do a certain degree. I mean, I didn't go to university. I worked at university, believe it or not. So there was a university where I policed, and when I was in uniform, and when I got to see and was friends with people, and I was very envious of the lifestyle. Here's me on a Saturday night working nights, stood outside the student union, watching people of my age partying away and having the time of life. And I'll be honest with you, I was incredibly jealous of these people, and there's no doubt about that. And do I regret not going to university? Well, I can't regret not going, because of where I am now, and when I've got the career and many people in university would dream of having. And I took a very unconventional route to get here. What I would say is, university can be right for some people, it can be wrong for some people, but I am equally on board with you and experiences. We need surgeons to go to medical school. We need, I don't think we need police officers, but they're making police officers go to university and colleges and things. So I think there's this element that I've got kids, so I'll go back. Regress a little bit here to school. So school is heavily focused on academic success and peer comparison. And life is to a degree as well. But so you put these kids in school, you give them what is an incredibly outdated syllabus to learn. You tell them to remember things that they can go and search in a second on Google with a device, facts and figures that are completely irrelevant, that are just taking up time and space in their head and taking up time. They ask them to do homework, and there's no actually clear point of the homework. In fact, my son's homework from high school recently, believe it or not, was to watch TV. So to watch an art program. And I think realistically, it's school is failing children massively, certainly in Britain. I can't come for the rest of the world, and the system is broken. And you have that point where someone has an easy time at school because they're good at remembering facts. And that's the reality. They go sit in an exam and they've got great short-term memory. Exams, GCSEs or whatever they call them these days, is really mostly about the ability to recall facts. Well, that's the internet. Why did they ban phones in exams? Because why did they ban the internet? So you can't go find the answers. And that's ridiculous when you think the answers themselves, finding the answers is a skill in itself. And it shows how wrong about face that we've got with things. And it's the same with universities. I had a lot to do with university and their marketing qualification. I ended up consulting on once, and it was basically a textbook, and something like, I think it was something like 40% of people didn't attend lectures, and they got videos of them because they've recorded the lectures. And the syllabus was outdated, massively outdated, and was written from a really high level, huge, big brand viewpoint of marketing, and not actually the real world in the streets of marketing for businesses today. And it's ended up with, I'm sure students have left, and they've understood that they spent 3 years or whatever and a lot of money that they've now got to repay, and they didn't get what they were promised, which is sad. But that being said, I know people who do digital marketing courses and degrees and are very happy, and they come out, but then some of those are supplementary learning as well. So I think it's a mixed bag right now, but I think the education system is broken in terms of what are we testing? Are we testing abilities? Are we growing people's skill bases? Or are we actually testing short-term memory? And those are the best short or long-term memories win. And that doesn't seem fair to me.
I'm absolutely loving this conversation, Andrew. It's exactly how I feel about the education system. And I always want to have an answer for how I would change it, but I haven't come up with one yet, because, to a certain extent, these exams and these qualifications are what help people progress into universities. And then, if you get a 2-1, somebody's going to hire you because you've got a one or so, whatever it is.
Mm-hmm.
This is how society works at the moment. And I wish I had a sort of a better way for us to, show some form of skill or something opposed to grades, but I haven't quite come up with it yet.
Yeah, I mean, I have my view. Probably my view's been shaped by a few other individuals, but I think we don't need teachers. We need experts to record. We need the best and the best in the world, the subject matter experts who are the best at conveying that at all levels, whether that be to university degrees or whether that be to 6-year-olds. And we find the best of the best, and we record them once. And then teachers cease to become teachers, they become coaching and coaches. And what their job is the children get to watch the best in education. So teaching standard no longer becomes an issue. And then inside the lessons, what people do is they're coached on what they've learned from the best and applying that. And that would suddenly be very different and very much fun. And we encourage an education system that is actually more individualistic. So, you might have one child logging into a course on woodwork, and there's a woodwork corner that they can go and make stuff in. And there might be another child logging into a course on sports science, and the teacher there is there not really as a expert in any subject, but is to help them to progress their learning, and they coach their learning. And whilst also, they've got to do the core subjects. There's no denying that, but wouldn't it be better to have the world's best 6-year-old maths teacher in Britain recording their lesson once because they're that good, and then conveying it, and you could send that out to everybody?
Yeah,
Then
no, I love it.
having
It's
the
a good
other
idea.
alternative. I mean, the other alternative is have teachers of varying standards who are varying skills, give the knowledge. There's two sections of it, isn't there? There's the knowledge and there's the coaching the child. And as they go through in adults and things like that, and with technology, we're not leveraging the internet in education. So, and that's coming from somebody who's literally learned everything he knows from online education. That if it wasn't for online education, I wouldn't have been able to do the job I'm doing, and also add the value to various clients over the years, and change businesses for people. So I'm firmly in the online education and the hybrid education space. I don't think it's ever going to happen. I don't think it will happen for 50 years, if that. There's too much friction in place about this old school, you've got to go to school and do it this way type of method.
I agree. I agree, definitely. But going a bit back towards SEO, if somebody's thinking of getting into this, what are 3 key skill sets that they should probably look to think about developing?
Okay, so you can go and learn anything about SEO, and you could learn everything about SEO over the next 3 months. You could go Google and read every single article and watch every single video. Probably won't have time to wash and only eat cereal, but in 3 months you would absolutely acquire all that information. You'd have all the parts of the tree, but you wouldn't understand it. So, and there's 2 parts to really becoming great at SEO. One is the learning of SEO. So you've got to learn it. And the second part is the doing of SEO. Now, ridiculously, both of these things are virtually free to do. So if I was to suggest to anybody, if I was to suggest anybody want to get into the career of SEO, there's 2 options. One, you can't go to university or anything like that, but you can look for entry-level positions inside digital agencies and go down that route. But you don't need to wait for that. You can read everything you can about SEO. There's resources littered across the internet. But then what you need to start doing is doing the SEO. And if you rock up at an agency and say, hey, listen, I've grown a site from 0 to 10,000 visitors per month, and it's not making any money, or just got a few ads on there, it just pays for the hosting, and I really love the process. Can I talk to you about how I did it? And if there's any jobs, can you offer, would you think about me in the future? If there's somebody who's going to think about getting in the career of SEO, that is far more powerful than rocking up and saying, I want a job in SEO, because it's showing that you're really involved in SEO rather than just saying you want SEO. And SEO is probably less attractive for people in many ways, because everyone wants to be a TikToker these days, or an influencer, or a YouTuber, and I get that. But essentially, SEO is really powerful because we change behaviors through content and through websites that are discovered online, and we can add value to society in ways that influencers maybe can't, because their Instagram picture disappears very quickly, and it's a very it's a very temporary thing. Video YouTube is a bit different, but I think if you want to go into career, the 3 steps I would suggest is read everything you can, do SEO, try it, fail. If you're doing, eventually you'll succeed if you're following the advice. And then 3, following that, is head up to somebody who can employ you in SEO, or start freelancing after you've got that success in your own time. The danger is you don't want to charge people to do it on their money and to learn on their money. That's the wrong thing. So that's why I spent a long time doing projects on my own before I even went professional in the business or even charged anyone for it. I'd made many successes and failures, but you don't have to wait like 8 years like I did. Literally the internet is a very vastly better place than it was when I first started, with so much more resources on there. You can really condense that learning, and you can even do it simultaneously. Build a website first and then start trying things out and learning SEO, and if you get success, then, and even if it's a small amount of success, you can get your foot in the door somewhere.
And what would you say has been the number 1 positive you've taken out of working in SEO?
That's a really interesting question. The number 1 benefit, I would say, the number 1 thing is opportunity. The SEO has opened doors that I never thought were possible for me, and it's good because you don't need any qualifications to get in the SEO game, and there's a lot of opinions. It's really one of them strange things where getting your first job in SEO is arguably the hardest part if you want to go and get a job in SEO. But there exists many people traveling all over the world as SEO freelancers running their agents. I've got a lot of friends who sun it up in Bali and other places in the world whilst living behind their laptop. And yeah, they're not on the beach, and it isn't the way people think it is, but they're living an incredible life of opportunity because all they need is an internet connection. So it is a job with opportunity that isn't the same as other careers, and the internet's not going out anywhere. If anything, search engine opportunity optimization is going to get bigger because the marketplace will be very diverse. Yes, we've got Google, that's always going to be the biggest creature out there, but now we've got sites like Ecosia, which plant trees in return for using their search engine. You've got DuckDuckGo. Hrefs launched another website, it's another search engine, and eventually that'll continue. There'll be a diversification of search engines to the point where SEO becomes even more opportunity in the industry. And as a result of that, you're going to have plenty of ways to earn a living, and there's plenty of subsets of SEO where you can learn very specific skills. So opportunity, that's how I'd advise anyone. If you're looking for an unusual career path which has incredibly diverse opportunities, then SEO is hard to break into. But once you break into it, there's incredible things. The world's a big place once you're involved in SEO.
And then on the flip side of that, what's something that's maybe less favorable about working in SEO?
It's not glamorous. So, it is, SEO is mostly a very long-term process where you have to play long-term games. So it is a process that requires patience, and very few people have that patience. If everyone's loss averse, no one wants to pay money out and then wait 6 to 12 months for results. And even if they say they do, that patience runs thin a lot of the time. So it is being the patience. You've got to be patient, and that's the problem with SEO. It's a long-term game, and if you enter, we've got people in our office who have been doing SEO since they were 16, they're 24 now. And they entered the digital marketing apprentices, and they've grown through, and they're on fantastic wages, and they're doing really well in life. And so the opportunities are there, and it's just the downside is that you have to give up stuff. You have to sacrifice things because you've got to learn. You have to sacrifice Netflix, for a couple of days a week. You have to read books. You have to go online. You have to go to that knowledge. That's the problem with SEO. It requires a great degree of sacrifice.
And then to wrap this up, would you still go into this industry knowing everything you know now?
The only thing I can suggest is that yes, I would. But I think if I'm honest with you, for me personally, there are other parts of marketing which also fascinate me that I didn't know even existed until recently, like behavioral science and things like that. But if I were to repeat my career path, I would be very happy. But also, I wish I'd gone into marketing as a young man because I wish I'd started as that 16-year-old in marketing rather than go down the police. I can't say I'm unhappy about the police. It was an incredible experience, and I got to see life in probably too detailed way. But what I would say is if I could start again now, it would be to go into marketing as early as humanly possible, because marketing makes change happen. That's what marketing is about. And it's an incredibly responsible role to be a marketer and somebody who changes the behaviors of others. And I think that's something I'm massively passionate about, and I wish I'd done it all sooner.
Well, I've absolutely loved chatting with you today, Andrew. I love your perspective and your outlook on careers and life in general. So thank you so much. And where
No
can people
worries.
find you and your company?
Okay, so there's two places you can find me. So Embryo Digital, if you Google Embryo Marketing or Embryo digital.co.uk, you'll find our website. And also at Zoogly, which is spelled Zoogly. That's like where you'll see that's my first agency website, and it's still going. It's got loads of content on there, and we're going to do a refresh. And also, if you want to learn more about SEO, I've got a book called The Value of SEO, which is available on Amazon as well.
Brilliant. Thank you, Andrew.
Pleasure.